The great hall of the alien palace was silent. Tall crystal pillars rose high into the sky, and the floor shone like black glass. The queen of the empire sat on her throne, her golden eyes cold and sharp. Around her stood generals, advisors, and guards, all waiting for her command. Today, they brought news of a strange creature, something not from their world, not from their stars. The captain of the guard stepped forward, his voice firm but uneasy. "My queen, we have captured an outsider. He is unlike anything we have seen before. He bleeds red, his skin is soft, and his eyes are human." The hall filled with whispers. "Human," one advisor said, almost laughing. "A weak race, myths from old stories," another added. But others shook their heads, uneasy. The queen lifted her hand, and the hall grew quiet again. Her voice was calm, but every word carried power. "That human?" she asked slowly. "Is it true?" The guards hesitated, but before they could answer, a softer voice cut through the silence. It was the princess, stepping forward, her silver crown glinting under the palace lights. Her eyes burned with curiosity. "Yes, mother," she said, firmly. "He's the one I want." The hall froze. Generals stared in shock. Advisors whispered in disbelief. Why would the princess want such a creature? Why would she choose a weak human among so many powerful warriors of their empire? The queen narrowed her golden eyes, studying her daughter. "You want him?" she asked, her tone sharp, almost dangerous. "Why?" The princess did not look away. Her gaze was steady, her voice calm. "Because he is different," she said. "Because he does not bow, even in chains." The queen's lips curved into a small, cold smile. "Very well," she said. "Bring the human to me." The heavy doors of the hall opened. The sound of footsteps echoed, slow and rough. The guards dragged the human forward, chains around his wrists and ankles. His clothes were torn, his face carried bruises, but his eyes, his human eyes, were burning with fire. The court leaned forward, whispering, staring at him. So small compared to their tall alien forms, so fragile, yet not broken. He looked around the hall, at the guards, at the advisors, at the queen herself, and he did not lower his head. The queen tilted her head slightly, her voice calm but curious. "You are human?" she asked. The man said nothing, only stared back at her. His silence was not fear. It was defiance. The princess felt her heart quicken. No alien warrior had ever stood like that before the queen. "Answer me," the queen ordered. Her voice, sharper still, the human did not bow, did not kneel. Instead he spoke, his voice quiet but strong. "I am what you see. I am human, and I will not break." The hall erupted with gasps and whispers. "No one speaks like that before the queen," one guard muttered. "Foolish creature, he does not know death," another sneered. But the princess smiled ever so slightly, for she had found something rare. The queen leaned back in her throne, her golden eyes never leaving the human. "You are weak, your body small, your strength nothing," she said. "Why should I let you live?" The human raised his chin, his eyes filled with fire. "Because I have something you do not," he said. The queen's brows lifted slightly. "And what is that?" she asked. The man's lips curved into a faint smile. "Human will," he said simply. The words were strange, almost meaningless to the alien court. But the princess understood. She saw it in his eyes, in the way he stood, in the way he refused to break. It was not muscle, not claws, not weapons. It was something deeper, something their kind had forgotten long ago. The queen studied him in silence. Her throne room felt colder, heavier, as if the walls themselves waited for her judgment. She tapped one finger on the armrest of her throne, slow and deliberate. "Very well," she said at last. "We will test this. Human." The guards pulled the chains, dragging the man back. But he did not stumble. Every step he took was his own, firm and unbroken. The princess's eyes followed him, her voice whispering softly, but clear enough for the queen to hear. "Yes," she said. He is the one I want. The queen turned her head sharply toward her daughter. Careful, child, she warned. This human is not what he seems, and danger often hides in the smallest of creatures. But deep in her golden eyes, the queen herself felt something strange, a spark of unease, a whisper of fear. For in all her years of ruling, no prisoner had ever dared to stare back at her like that human. The encounter was only the beginning. Something had entered their empire. Something small, fragile, yet unyielding. And both the queen and the princess knew nothing would ever be the same again. The night before his capture was burned into his memory. The sky had been torn apart by fire, the stars hidden by smoke. His ship, small and fragile compared to alien war vessels, had fallen like a broken bird across the endless black. Engines screamed, metal ripped, and fire swallowed the hull. He had fought with everything he had, but space showed no mercy. When the ship struck the alien ground, the earth shook and the man's fate was sealed. The aliens had come quickly, their armor gleaming under strange suns. They expected to find a broken body, a creature begging for mercy. But instead, they found him standing in the wreck, blood running down his face, fire burning behind him. He held a broken metal pipe in his hands, ready to fight, not against victory, but against the idea of surrender. The soldiers were taller, stronger, with weapons sharp and glowing. Yet they hesitated, for his eyes were not the eyes of prey. They charged, but he moved with wild desperation. Every strike he made was clumsy compared to their perfect training. But his strikes carried something else: rage, survival, the madness of a man who refuses to die. One soldier fell, another stumbled. But there were too many, and soon his arms were heavy, his wounds deep. They chained him, yet he did not cry out. Even with blood on his lips, he smiled at them, a thin, defiant smile. And that smile unnerved the warriors of the empire. They dragged him through cities of glass and metal. Citizens looked on in wonder and fear. "Is that a human?" they whispered. "From the old stories? The destroyers of worlds? Or just a fragile beast?" Children hid behind their mothers. Merchants closed their stalls. The alien world had seen many captives, but never one like him. He saw their towers, reaching into the sky, their skies filled with ships like swarms of silver birds. He saw their strength, their empire stretching farther than his mind could imagine. And still, he did not bow. He walked in chains, but his spirit was free. When they brought him into the palace, he looked around with sharp eyes, every corner, every guard, every shadow. He studied them all, not as a prisoner begging for mercy, but as a soldier searching for weakness. This unsettled the guards, who had seen countless prisoners before. None had ever dared to look at them as equals. The princess, hidden behind curtains that night, had watched it all. She saw his arrival, his silent defiance, the way he carried himself even in chains, and something inside her stirred. Her people had strength, yes, but it was cold, perfect, and without soul. This man, this human, was different. He burned with a fire that her kind had long forgotten. In the dark of his cell, the human sat alone. The air was damp, the walls, heavy stone, chains dug into his wrists, yet his mind was sharp. He thought of Earth, of home, of the countless times humanity had faced death and refused to vanish. Dinosaurs, ice ages, wars, plagues. Humanity had survived them all. And he whispered to himself, "This is no different. I will survive this too." The guards who checked on him grew uneasy. He never pleaded, never begged, never cursed. He only watched, silent, unblinking. One guard muttered, "He waits, but for what?" Another answered, "For the right moment." Word spread quickly through the palace. Advisors warned the queen that this creature was dangerous, not for his body, but for something else, something harder to name. He inspired whispers even in chains, and whispers could grow into storms. The queen, calm and proud, ignored their fear, but in the shadow of her throne, the princess thought differently. She remembered the stories of humanity told in secret scrolls, stories of fragile creatures who built fire, who reached for stars with bare hands, stories of warriors who fought even when hope was gone. And she wondered if those stories had walked into her mother's palace that very night. The human did not sleep easily. Every sound in the prison was sharp, every shadow alive. But he used the silence to plan. He counted guard steps, watched. Their patterns studied the way the torches flickered with every draft of air. Every detail was fuel for his will, and though he was chained, he was already preparing. For he knew one truth. Survival is the first victory. Escape comes after. The next morning the queen summoned him to the throne room. Chains rattled as the guards pulled him forward. But he walked with steady steps, not dragged, not broken, and, as the golden doors opened, he knew this was the beginning, not the end. The princess's eyes met his once more, and in that moment, without a word, a dangerous bond began to form. One of curiosity, one of respect, and perhaps something even more powerful. The human's arrival was not just a capture, it was a spark that would set fire to the empire itself. The queen's throne room was alive with tension. Her golden eyes studied the human as though he were a puzzle. He stood there in chains, battered but unbroken. The silence was heavy, and every whisper of the court sounded like thunder. At last, the queen raised her hand. Her voice echoed through the chamber, sharp and commanding. "This human claims strength," she declared. "But words are cheap. Strength must be proven." Her gaze cut toward the guards. "Prepare the trial." The court stirred, excitement and fear mixing in their voices. The trial was no game. It was a test reserved for warriors, criminals, and beasts. Few left it alive, and never before had a human faced it. The guards dragged him to the great arena. The floor was made of black stone, scarred by countless battles. Torches burned along the walls, casting long shadows. Above, balconies were filled with nobles, generals, and curious citizens. They wanted to see if the old myths of humanity were true or just foolish stories. The princess stood behind the queen, her heart beating faster. She did not look at her mother. She did not speak. Her eyes never left the human. He stood tall despite his wounds, despite the heavy chains. Something about his presence silenced even her doubts. When the guards removed his shackles, the crowd laughed. "He is small." One noble jeered. "He has no claws, no fangs, no armor." Another sneered. "What can he do?" The queen raised her hand and the laughter died. "Release the challenger," she ordered. From the iron gates at the far side of the arena, a beast emerged. It was twice the height of the human, with skin like stone and eyes that glowed like fire. A monster bred for war, muscle and rage bound together. The crowd roared as the beast pounded its chest, the ground shaking beneath its weight. The human looked at it calmly. No weapon, no shield, nothing but his bare hands. The princess leaned forward, whispering to herself, "Stand strong." The beast charged with thunderous steps. The human dodged, rolling to the side, his body moving quick and sharp. The monster's claws scraped the stone, sparks flying. The crowd gasped, surprised at his speed. He grabbed a loose stone from the floor, sharp and jagged. When the beast turned, he struck, jamming it into the creature's eye. The beast howled, shaking the walls of the arena. It swung its massive arms wildly. The human was thrown to the ground. The wind knocked from his chest. Blood ran down his face. But still, he rose one step then another, his body trembling but his spirit burning brighter. The queen watched with narrowed eyes. "This is no ordinary prey," she whispered. Her advisors shifted uneasily, unsure whether to be impressed or alarmed. The beast lunged again, jaws wide. At the last moment, the human leapt forward, grabbing a broken spear that lay forgotten from an older battle. With a roar of his own, he drove the weapon deep into the creature's throat. The beast staggered, choking, its body trembling, then it fell with a thunderous crash. Silence filled the arena. The human stood over the fallen monster, chest heaving, his clothes torn and soaked with blood. But his eyes still burned, alive, unyielding. He lifted the broken spear in the air, not in triumph, but in defiance. And the crowd, for the first time, did not laugh. They were silent, watching him with something new, fear and respect. The queen leaned back in her throne, her golden eyes locked on the human. He had survived the trial, something few of her own warriors had ever done. Her lips curled into a thin smile, though her mind was storming with questions. This is the strength of humanity, she thought. Not muscle, not size, but the will to rise again and again. The princess felt her breath catch. Her heart raced, her eyes wide. She had seen many warriors, many victories, but none like this. This was not just strength. This was something deeper, something she could not name, but she felt it in her chest like fire. The advisors argued in hushed tones. He is too dangerous, one warned. If he survives more trials, the people will speak of him as legend, another said. But others whispered differently. Perhaps he could serve us. Perhaps his kind has power we could use. The queen raised her hand, silencing them all. She stood from her throne, her voice ringing through the arena. The human has survived, she said. His life will not end today. Gasps echoed through the balconies. The human lowered the broken spear, his gaze meeting the queen's without fear. In that moment, an unspoken challenge passed between them. He would not kneel, and she would not look away. The princess stepped forward, her voice soft but firm. Mother, you see now why I want him. The queen's eyes flickered toward her daughter, sharp as blades. You want him too much, she said coldly. Be careful, for humans are fire, and fire burns all who reach too close. The human said nothing, but his silence spoke louder than words. He had faced death and lived. He had stood against a monster twice his size and refused to fall. The people had seen it, the court had seen it, the queen had seen it, and in their hearts, one thought burned bright. This human was not weak, he was dangerous. The test of strength was over, but in truth it had only just begun. The arena was silent long after the beast fell. Smoke from the torches curled in the air and the scent of blood lingered on the stone. The human stood tall, battered and bleeding, but alive. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, yet his eyes burned with that same fire. The queen returned to her throne, her golden robes flowing like liquid flame. Her voice was calm but sharp. He lives, she said, but this does not prove he is strong, it only proves he is stubborn. Her words carried across the hall. Yet inside she felt something she had not felt in centuries. Doubt. The princess, standing beside her, spoke softly, her voice filled with quiet excitement. No, mother, you are wrong, she said. He showed something greater than strength. The queen turned her eyes on her daughter, cold and piercing. And what is that? She asked. The princess met her gaze without fear. Will, she said. The power to rise even when all hope is gone. The queen said nothing, but her silence was louder than words. She looked back at the human, his body weak, his frame small, yet his spirit unbroken. And though she would not admit it aloud, she felt a spark of unease. For such will could not be controlled so easily. The human was taken back to his cell, his steps slow but firm. Guards whispered as they passed, "Why does he not fall? How does he still walk?" They had seen prisoners crawl and beg for mercy after lesser wounds, but this man, this human, carried his pain like armor. In the cold cell, he lay against the wall, blood soaking his torn clothes. Every breath was sharp, every muscle screamed. Yet he did not cry out, he did not curse. Instead, he whispered to himself, "Stand, always stand, even if the world breaks." The princess came to him in secret, her footsteps soft against the stone. The guards were ordered away, for she was the daughter of the queen. She stepped into the cell and saw him sitting there, battered but proud. For a moment, she only stared, drawn to something she could not explain. "You should be dead," she said quietly. The human opened his eyes, his voice low but steady. "Should be," he agreed. "But I am not." The princess tilted her head, studying him like a riddle. "Why do you fight? Why do you rise when falling would be easier?" He looked at her, his gaze sharp despite his pain. Because humans do not stop, he said. Even when the world ends, we find a way to endure. We survive. We adapt. We fight again. The princess felt her chest tighten. Her people were strong. Yes, but their strength was cold and predictable. They won battles with numbers, with power, with discipline. But this man fought with something invisible, something no blade could cut. Is that your secret? She asked softly. The hidden power of your kind? The human smiled faintly, blood still on his lips. Our secret is simple, he said. We refuse to die quietly. The princess stood in silence, her heart unsettled. She realized that his weakness was his weapon. Where her people broke those who resisted, he grew stronger. Where others surrendered, he endured. And that endurance was more terrifying than claws or blades. Outside the cell, whispers spread. Nobles spoke of the human with unease. Did you see his eyes? He looked at the queen herself and did not bow. Some laughed, calling him stubborn, but others grew afraid. For stubbornness that survives death is no small thing. The queen called her counsel, her voice cold and steady. This human is dangerous, she declared, not because of strength, but because he makes others question their own. Advisors argued among themselves. Kill him before the people grow bold, one urged. Study him, learn from him. Another suggested, perhaps humanity has secrets that could strengthen the empire. The queen listened, her face calm, but her mind sharp. She knew the human was not like the others they had conquered. He was something different, something that could spread like fire through dry wood, and fire was the one thing her empire had always feared. Meanwhile, the princess visited again, drawn as though by fate. She asked about his world, about Earth. He spoke of forests and oceans, of storms that shattered cities, of winters that froze the weak. He spoke of wars fought with fire and steel, and of humans who stood when gods themselves seemed to strike them down. His words painted pictures in her mind, terrible, yet beautiful. A people who had clawed their way from mud to stars, not because they were the strongest, but because they never gave up. The princess listened, her heart caught between wonder and fear. The palace was quiet that night. The halls of crystal glowed faintly with moonlight from the alien sky. Guards stood at their posts, sharp and silent. Yet even they whispered of the human. His victory in the trial had spread through the empire. Like fire in dry fields, everywhere people spoke of him. The weak creature who had stood against death and refused to bow. But in the heart of the palace, behind guarded doors, the princess could not sleep. Her mind returned again and again to his eyes, the fire that refused to die. She had seen warriors fight before. She had seen victories and defeats. But never had she seen someone rise again and again with such unshaken spirit. Something inside her was restless, something that told her she needed to understand him. So she moved quietly through the halls, her silver cloak wrapped tight around her. The guards bowed as she passed, for none could stop the daughter of the queen. Her steps led her down to the prison cells, where shadows clung to the cold stone walls, and there behind heavy iron bars sat the human. He was awake, leaning against the wall, his body still bruised, his clothes torn. Chains hung from his wrists, yet his posture was strong. When he saw her, he did not rise, he did not bow. He only lifted his head and met her eyes, calm and steady. You came, he said quietly, his voice low but clear. The princess hesitated, then stepped closer. I wanted to see you, she admitted. Why? He asked, his tone not rude but curious. The princess looked at him for a long moment before answering. Because I do not understand you. The human gave a faint smile, though it was tired. There is little to understand, he said. I am only what I am, a man who will not break. But the princess shook her head. No, there is more, she said firmly. You fight when there is no hope. You stand when you should fall. Why? For a moment silence filled the cell. Then the human spoke, his words slow and heavy. Because that is what we are, we humans. We fight even when hope is gone. Because hope is not given to us, we make it. The princess felt her heart stir. Her people lived in luxury and endless control. They had forgotten what struggle meant, but this man, this human, carried struggle in every breath. It was part of him, and it made him stronger than his body appeared. She asked him of his world, and he spoke. He told her of endless seas that swallowed ships, of storms that tore mountains, of winters where cold killed the weak, of deserts where heat burned the land. And through it all, humanity endured. She listened, eyes wide, her heart racing with every word. It was not strength of muscle that had brought his kind to the stars. It was their will to survive the impossible. "Your world sounds cruel," she whispered. "It was," he replied. "But it made us who we are." The princess stood in silence, torn between fear and admiration. In his voice she heard pain, but also pride. She realized that his scars were not just wounds, they were stories. Each one told of survival. Each one carried the power of his people. "You are not like us," she said at last. "You are something different." The human looked at her, his gaze steady. "Different is dangerous," he said. "Remember that." Her lips curved into a faint smile. "Danger is not always a curse," she whispered. And for the first time, he looked at her, with something softer than fire. Curiosity, maybe even respect. But outside the cell, shadows stirred. The queen had spies everywhere, and whispers of the princess's visits reached her ears. From her throne, she watched silently, her golden eyes sharp as blades. Her daughter was drawing close to the human, too close, and the queen knew that bonds could be more dangerous than weapons. The princess returned night after night, speaking with him, learning from him. Their words were simple, but every conversation built something stronger. She learned of Earth's history of endless wars and endless hope. He learned of her empire, of order without struggle, strength without fire, and between their worlds a bridge began to form. The bond was not love, not yet. It was something deeper: respect, trust, the recognition of strength in different forms. The princess saw in him what her people had lost, and the human saw in her something rare among her kind. Curiosity without cruelty, yet the closer they drew, the more dangerous it became. The queen watched with rising fury. She feared not just the human's will, but the way he awakened something in her daughter: hope, defiance, belief, things that could shatter an empire if left unchecked. One night, as the princess left the cell, the human's voice stopped her. "Why do you risk this?" he asked. "Your mother would not forgive." The princess paused, her heart heavy. "Because you are the first who has made me question what strength truly is," she said, and with that, she vanished into the shadows of the palace. The bond between them had begun, fragile but unbreakable, and though neither spoke it aloud, they both knew the truth. This bond was dangerous, for it carried not only respect and trust, but the power to change everything. The queen's palace was alive with whispers. Every corridor echoed with the same name, the same story. The human, the human, the human. Nobles argued in secret chambers. Guards muttered under their breath. Servants passed rumors like sparks. Some said he was only a stubborn beast, lucky in the arena, but others began to believe the old myths, that humans carried fire in their hearts, fire that could never be put out. The queen sat upon her throne, her golden eyes colder than ever. Her empire had survived countless threats, countless enemies, but now, it was her daughter's gaze that troubled her most. The princess no longer looked at her with fear or obedience. Her eyes carried questions, questions born from the human's words, and questions were more dangerous than swords. One evening, the queen called her generals. The great war table glowed with star maps and battle routes. Her voice was calm, but her tone cut like a blade. "This human has become a shadow upon our empire," she declared. "He must be destroyed before his spark becomes flame." The four generals bowed, but not all agreed. One spoke carefully. "My queen, if he can be controlled, perhaps he could serve us. His will could be useful." Another shook his head. No, he is poison. He infects the princess already. Soon he will infect the people. The queen's hand rose, and silence fell. Her words were final. Then let there be no doubt. The human dies at dawn. The princess heard the order from the shadows of the council chamber. Her heart clenched, her blood ran cold. She rushed through the palace, her silver cloak flying behind her. Down into the prison hall she went, and there she found him, still chained, still wounded, yet still unbroken. They will kill you at dawn, she whispered, her voice trembling. The human looked up, calm as always. I thought they might, he said, almost as if it was nothing. Her fists tightened, anger flashing in her eyes. Why are you not afraid? She asked. The human gave a faint smile. Fear does nothing, standing does. The princess pressed closer to the bars, her voice urgent. I cannot let them take you, not like this. The human studied her carefully. You would stand against your own mother for me? He asked. Her chest tightened, but her answer came without hesitation. Yes, she whispered, because you have shown me strength that my people have forgotten. You have shown me what fire truly is. The human leaned back against the stone, his eyes sharp but calm. Then understand this, he said. Saving me will bring war. Your mother will see it as betrayal, and empires do not forgive betrayal. The princess lowered her head, torn between duty and conviction, but in her heart she already knew her choice. The night stretched long and heavy. In the great hall, the queen prepared for morning judgment. She would execute the human publicly, to crush the whispers once and for all, to remind her people that no fragile outsider could ever stand against the empire. But in the cell, the princess returned with a key hidden in her hand. Her eyes burned with determination. I will not let you die, she whispered. The human stared at her, silent for a long moment. Finally he nodded. Then we stand together, he said. She unlocked the chains, and for the first time he stood free. Though his body was battered, his spirit seemed to grow taller in the dim torchlight. The princess felt a strange pull in her chest. Not love. Not yet, but something dangerous, a bond forged in fire. Suddenly, the sound of boots echoed down the hall. Guards were approaching, drawn by whispers of betrayal. The princess turned sharply, her voice fierce. Run! But the human shook his head. No. If we run now, they will hunt us like animals. We must choose the moment. We must face them. The guards arrived, blades drawn, their voices sharp. What are you doing, princess? One demanded. The human stepped forward, unchained, standing tall. I am choosing my own fate, he said. And with one swift strike he disarmed the guard, turning their own weapon in his hand. The hall exploded with chaos. Steel clashed, shouts rang out. The princess stood at his side, her eyes blazing with defiance. Together, they fought their way past the guards. The human's every move was desperate, rough, but filled with survival. The princess, though less skilled, fought with courage she had never known before. When the last guard fell, silence returned. The human stood breathing heavily, the weapon still in his hand. The princess's eyes locked on his. You see now, she whispered. We cannot go back. Not anymore. The human nodded, his gaze steady. Then we move forward, he said. But in the shadows of the hall, unseen, a spy slipped away, running through the palace corridors carrying the truth to the queen. By dawn, she would know everything. Her daughter had betrayed her. The human had escaped chains. The empire itself trembled. Caught between loyalty and rebellion, the queen, upon hearing the news, did not rage. She only smiled, cold and dangerous. So it begins, she whispered. And with that she prepared her empire for war. The rising conflict had begun. The bond between princess and human was no longer secret. It was open rebellion, and rebellion demanded blood. The throne room was filled before the first light of dawn. Nobles, generals, and citizens crowded the high balconies. They had come to see a human die, to see their queen prove once again that no outsider could defy her rule. The air was heavy. the walls glowing faintly with the fire of 1,000 torches. But whispers cut through the silence. "Where is the prisoner? Why has he not been brought forth?" The queen sat upon her throne, her golden eyes calm but burning with rage beneath. She already knew the truth. Her daughter had betrayed her, the human had broken chains, and now the entire empire would watch as mother and child stood on opposite sides. The heavy doors opened with a thunderous echo. The princess entered first, silver cloak flowing, her chin held high, and beside her walked the human, unchained, his body scarred but his eyes blazing. Gasps erupted across the hall, voices rising. In shock and disbelief, the princess walks with him. She stands with the human. The queen raised her hand, and the hall fell silent once more, her voice carried like thunder. "Daughter," she said coldly, "you dare bring this creature before me as an equal?" The princess's voice did not tremble. "He is no creature," she replied. "He is human, and he is the one I choose." The hall erupted. Shouts of anger, cries of disbelief. The queen stood, her figure towering with authority. "You choose him over your people, your blood, your queen?" The princess did not falter. "I choose truth," she said. "I choose strength that is not cold, not empty, but alive." The queen's eyes narrowed, her voice sharp as a blade. "Then you are no daughter of mine," she declared. The words struck like lightning, yet the princess did not bow. Instead, she stepped closer to the human, her hand resting near his arm, and in that simple gesture the empire trembled. The queen turned her gaze on the human. "You," she said, her voice dripping with contempt. "You dare to corrupt my child. You dare to stand in my hall as if you belong." The human lifted, his head, his voice steady. "I do not belong, but I stand." The words were simple, but they carried like fire through dry wood. The people in the balconies leaned forward, their eyes wide, their hearts stirred. The queen raised her hand, signaling the guards. "Seize them both," she ordered. But when the soldiers stepped forward, hesitation flickered in their eyes. They had seen the human fight, they had seen him endure, and now, with the princess at his side, doubt crept into their hearts. The human stepped forward, his voice strong. "You rule with fear," he said. "But fear dies when someone chooses to stand." The hall shook with murmurs, whispers spreading like a storm. "Fear dies when someone stands," the words repeated. From mouth to mouth, the queen's fury grew, her control slipping like sand through fingers. The princess's voice rose. "Clear and fierce, mother. You call him weak, yet he has shown us strength no empire can crush. He is not just the one I want, he is the one this empire needs." The queen's hand trembled with rage, her golden eyes blazing. "Silence," she thundered. But the people no longer obeyed in silence. Whispers grew louder, spreading into shouts. They saw him fight. They saw him survive. What if the princess is right? The queen realized in that moment that killing him now would not end the threat. It would only make him a martyr, a symbol, a fire that would burn forever. Her empire stood at the edge of chaos, and all of it because of a single human who refused to bow. The queen raised her hand once more, but before she could speak, the human's voice rang out. "I am not here to take your throne," he said. "I am not here to command your people. I am here because I will not kneel, not to you, not to anyone, and that is what makes me human." The hall fell silent, his words echoing against the high crystal walls. For a heartbeat, even the queen herself could not speak. She saw in him the reflection of something her empire had long buried, the unstoppable will to endure, to resist, to rise. At last, the queen lowered her hand, her voice cold and sharp. "Then so be it," she said. "You will not kneel, and I will not yield." "War it is." The hall shook with gasps, the nobles frozen in fear. The princess's eyes widened, but her voice was steady. "Then let it come," she whispered, "for no empire can stand forever against the fire of humanity." The human stood beside her, silent but unbroken. The queen sat upon her throne, her face carved from stone, and the people of the empire looked on. their hearts caught between fear and hope. In that moment, a choice was made. The bond between princess and human was sealed. The queen's wrath was unleashed, and the empire itself trembled on the edge of a storm. The turning point had come. Nothing would ever be the same again.